Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Vav, Daf 36 of Masechta Yoma. Daf Lamed Vav has like a number of kind of sugyas on it, so there's like a bunch of stuff to work through over here. A machlokas at the beginning about what exactly is considered the north part of the Azara, because Kodshei Kodshim Shchitason Batzafon, that Kodshei Kodshim have to be slaughtered in the north part of the Azara. So any north part of the Azara, or maybe certain northern parts of the Azara are more northerny for this regard, in this regard, than others. The vidui that you do on a korban in general, we'll see a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva, also then as filtered through Rabbi Yirmiyah and Abaye, and then the vidui of the Kohen Gadol specifically on Yom Kippur. So machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir over there. So there's a few different sugyas that we're going to be jumping into, and we will begin with a Mishnah on Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis at the bottom of the Daf. Balo Eitzel Paro. So the Kohen Gadol gets to his cow. Okay, and the cow was waiting for him between the ulam. Now, for this daf, actually, in theory, it would be helpful if you had like a diagram of the Azara in front of you. But the ulam, of course, is the entranceway into the heichal, that big entranceway. We said that the gates in the Beis Hamikdash in general were 10 amos wide by 20 amos tall. The ulam was 20 amos wide by 40 amos tall. It was a big entryway. And his cow was standing between the ulam, the entryway into the heichal, and the mizbeach. Okay. Roshul Adarim, Ufan of the Meir. Now, the cow was standing north-south. Its face was towards the front of the cow. The head of the cow was in the south, and the back of the cow was in the north. And then the face of the cow was turned westwards towards the Kodesh HaKodashim, towards the Heichal. V'hakoyin omid b'mizrach, and the Kohen Gadol was standing in the east, right, to the east of the cow. Ufan of the Mariv, and he was looking towards the west, also towards the Heichal. V'somach shteyad of olav misvade, and he leans with his two hands on the cow, and he says the following vidui, confession. V'kachayomid is what he would say, Ana Hashem, please God, avisi pashati chatasi lefanecha. I've done all sorts of sins before you. The Gemara is going to explain what exactly avon, pesha, and chatas are. Anu vesi, me and my household. Ana Hashem, please God. Kapen or lavonos v'lapshoim l'achtoim shavisi v'shapashati v'chatasi l'fenecha. Atone for the avonus pshoim chatoim that I avon, pesha, and chatas it in front of you. Anu vesi, me and my family. Kakos b'soros Moshe avdecha, as it says in the Torah of Moshe, your servant. That on this day he will atone upon you. And everybody else who was there says, blessed is the name of his honorable kingdom for all eternity. Well, that's our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, you hear the Gemara's kasha? The Gemara wants to know, according to who is Beina Ulam v'Lamizbeach considered the north part of the Azara? What does that mean? So, Kodshei Kodshim, such as the parachatas that he's about to offer, needs to be slaughtered in the north part of the Azara. Okay, so if you think about the Azara, you enter on the east, it then goes until you get to the Heichal, begins on right towards the west. Now, between the east, right, the eastern entrance of Shar Nicanor and the Ulam, which is the entrance to the Heichal, so between there, so once you walk through Shar Nicanor, and now you're in the Azara Gedola, so the first 11 Amos are what's called the Ezras Yisrael. That's where the Israelites can go. The next 11 Amos are what's called the Ezras Kohanim. Then after that, you get to the Mizbeach. And then after that, there's this area that's called Bein Ulam V'la Mizbeach, between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. And these three sections we will be discussing right now. Maybe I'll even just say the machlokas outside first. So according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, the only place where you're allowed to slaughter kachei kachim is mamish in that section of the Azara that is right opposite the Mizbeach. So again, the kachei kachim needs to be slaughtered in the northern part of the Azara, but not any part of the north. It's not like we divide the Azara in half, north, south, and any part of the north you would be able to slaughter kachei kachim. No. According to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, only the northern part of the Azara that is opposite the Mizbeach. So therefore, when you walk into the Azara through Shar Nikanor, and you first get to the Ezras Yisrael and then the Ezras Kohanim, you cannot slaughter kachei kachim in the northern section of the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim. And then you get to the Mizbeach, and then the width of the Mizbeach, the northern part of the Azara that is opposite the Mizbeach, you can slaughter kachei kachim there. But then when you keep on walking and now you're past the Mizbeach and you're by the section of the Azara that is between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, so the northern part of that section, according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, you're unable to slaughter kachei kachim there either. The only place you can slaughter kachei kachim, according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, is the northern part of the Azara, which is opposite the Mizbeach. Now, according to Rabbi Shimon, in addition to the part of the Azara which is opposite the Mizbeach, because as the pasuk says, Al Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafona, it needs to be on the northern side of the Mizbeach. So obviously, the section that Rabbi Yehuda limits the slaughtering of the kachei kachim to, obviously everybody agrees that would be ideal. However, Rabbi Shimon says you can even slaughter kachei kachim in the northern part of the Azara that's between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. Rebbe then adds on to that and says, in addition to the northern part of the Azara that is opposite the Mizbeach, as well as the northern part of the Azara that's Bein Ulam V'la Mizbeach, you can also slaughter kachei kachim in the northern part of the Azara that is in the Ezras Kohanim and the Ezras Yisrael. Got it? Amazing. So now, our Mishnah had said, what did our Mishnah say? And it says that his cow was between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. So chevre, whose opinion is it that you're allowed to slaughter kachei kachim in the northern part of the Azara that's between the Ulam and the Mizbeach? Rabbi Shimon. That's what the Gemara says. Man Shabbos said the Amar ben Ulam v'la Mizbeach tzafin, who in our three-way machlokas between Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rebbe, whose opinion is that between the Ulam and the Mizbeach would be considered the northern part of the Azar that you could slaughter kachei kachim therein. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon's opinion. The Tanya is learning the Brayse Ezu Tzafin. What's considered the northern part of the Azar for shchitas kachei kachim? Mikir shel Mizbeach tzfoni, from the northern wall of the Mizbeach, vad kosa la Azara, until opposite it, until you reach the northern wall of the Azara. Just that space. Uchneged kol Mizbeach kulo tzafin to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. For the entire width of the Mizbeach, so if you are walking past the Mizbeach from the east to the west, so that entire width of the Mizbeach, northward, opposite the Mizbeach, to the north, basically, you could slaughter kachei kachim there. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Mosif, Afin Ulam v'la Mizbeach. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon adds to that also the area between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, in the northern part of that section, that would be considered the north of the Azar for slaughtering kachei kachim. Rebbe Mosif, Af Makom Drisas Raglei Akwanim, V'Af Makom Drisas Raglei Yisrael. Rebbe adds to even Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon's opinion, which is that you can also slaughter kachei kachim in the northern part of the Azara, that is the Ezras Kohanim and the Ezras Yisrael. Okay. However, from the chalifos and inwards, the chalifos are, if you look at the ulam, the ulam is wider than the Heichal is. And it's wider than the Heichal by 15 amis on either side. So 15 amis in the north and 15 amis in the south. The Ulam is wider than the Heichal. Those extra sections in the north and in the south of the Ulam, that it is wider than the Heichal, so those two sections on either side are called the Beis HaChalifos. And what we're saying is that the Beis HaChalifos to the north, any area opposite, like in the thickness of the Beis HaChalifos and inwards, Kilu, once already you're getting to the area surrounding the Heichal, that would not be considered the north of the Azara with regard to slaughtering Kachei Kachim, because you can't see the Mizbeach from there, so it's certainly not Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafona. Okay, fine. Everyone agrees to that. Lema Reb Elazar Reb Shimoni v'lo Rebbe. So there you go. So let us conclude that our Mishnah is the opinion of Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, because it says that you're slaughtering the korban, the parachatas of the Kohen Gadol in the northern part of the Azara. That's Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach. That must be the opinion of Reb Elazar Reb Shimon. Afilu Tema Rebbe. Says the Gemara, you can even argue that it's the opinion of Rebbe. Rebbe Ashtad Reb Yossi Reb Yehuda Mosif. Reb Elazar Reb Shimon Lo Mosif. The Gemara says, if Rebbe is adding on to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, meaning that Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says that only the area between only the area opposite the northern part of the Mizbeach would be considered where you could slaughter Kachei Kachim. Rebbe is extending that to say that even further away from the Kodesh HaKodashim, even further away from the Heichal and from the Mizbeach, you can slaughter the Kachei Kachim. In the northern part of the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, you could slaughter Kachei Kachim. Certainly then, if he says that you're allowed to slaughter Kachei Kachim in the northern part of the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, he would say that you'd be allowed to slaughter Kachei Kachim Bein Ulam v'Lamizbeach, which is right opposite the Ulam and the Heichal. So if he says that you're allowed to go further away, certainly you can go closer, and therefore I'll argue that the Mishnah could also be Rebbe, because Rebbe says that in addition to opposite the northern part of the Mizbeach, and in addition to the northern part of the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, you can also slaughter Kachei Kachim in the northern part of Bein Ulam v'Lamizbeach, and therefore the Mishnah can be Rebbe as well. On an Achika Aminon, to which the Gemara says, no, this is what we mean when we say that it's Reb Elazar Reb Shimon. I Rebbehi, if the Mishnah was in fact Rebbe, Nukmei Bechula Azara. So then why, if you're Rebbe, and you can slaughter Kachei Kachim anywhere in the northern part of the Azara, including the Ezras Yisrael, the Ezras Kohanim, obviously opposite the Mizbeach, as well as Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach, so how come the Mishnah is saying that the Kohen Gadol specifically slaughters, or does at this point doing Vidui, but is going to be slaughtering this parachatas in the northern part of Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach? According to Rebbe, it could be any northern part of the Azara. Elamai, Reb Elazar Reb Shimoni. But then the Gemara says, wait a second. So what? So because of that reason, that logic, you're going to say that it's not Rebbe, and rather it's Reb Elazar Reb Shimon who says that you're allowed to slaughter a korban Kachei Kachim in the Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach, v'nukmei be'mizbeach v'lakosel. But according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, he doesn't say that you have to slaughter Kachei Kachim in the northern part of Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach. Everyone would agree that ideally you should be doing it opposite the northern part of the Mizbeach, because that's Al Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafona. That is the most literal interpretation of what the pasuk says, if you should be slaughtering Kachei Kachim on the northern side of the Mizbeach. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon is saying, even though, in addition to there, you could also, by the way, slaughter Kachei Kachim in the northern part of Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach, but that's not necessarily ideal. So then, according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, how come he's the Kohen Gadol specifically slaughtering the Kachei Kachim is parachatas in the northern part of Bein Ha'ulam v'Lamizbeach? Why not do it opposite the Mizbeach, to the north of the Mizbeach? What do you have to say? Mishum chulsha the Kohen Gadol. The reason why we're saying that even according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, you would the Kohen Gadol would slaughter his parachatas in the northern part of Benulim V'Lamizbeach, as opposed to the opposite, the northern part of the actual Mizbeach, is because, well, the Kohen Gadol's got a lot of work to do. It's a busy day. We saw also by Trumas Hadeshin that he could start doing it already from Chatzos because he's got a lot to do that day, so he could do it earlier. We try to take into consideration the fact that the Kohen Gadol is a very busy day on Yom Kippur, and there's a lot of stuff for him to do, and we want to conserve his energy. Obviously, he's not eating. So therefore, we say, you know what, just slaughter the Korban Chatas B'nei Ulam V'Lamizbeach in the part of the Azara that's closest to the Eichel, so he doesn't have to carry things as far. And if that's the case, the Rabbi Navi Mishum Chush the Kohen Gadol, you can also argue that the Mishnah is Rebbe. And if it's Rebbe, well then he could slaughter Kodshei Kodshim anywhere in the northern part of the Azara. However, so what's specific about Ben Ulam V'Lamizbeach? Because Rebbe would also agree that we want to conserve the energy of the Kohen Gadol. And therefore, even though you could slaughter Kodshei Kodshim anywhere in the northern part of the Azara, still, even Rebbe would say that the Kohen Gadol would be slaughtering his parachatas in the northern part of Ben Ulam V'Lamizbeach, the closest section of the Azara to the Heichal, and therefore you could argue that the Mishnah could be the opinion of Rebbe as well. Continues the Gemara quoting the Mishnah, Rosh Adarim Ufanav L'Mayriv. So the head of this cow was in the south, right? So the back of the cow was in the north, the head of this cow was in the south, and then we turn its head towards the west. So what does this look like? Okay, so you turn the head of the cow to the west. Why not just turn the cow east-west? Why north-south and turn its head to the west? Well, because if the cow needs to go to the bathroom, there'll be a lot of excrement. We don't want there to be a lot of excrement opposite, the Mizbeach. We don't want the back of the cow facing the Mizbeach. If it was just standing with its head in the east, with its head in the west, and its back towards the east, its back will be facing the Mizbeach. And then if it goes to the bathroom, there's a lot of excrement. So then that'll be facing the Mizbeach, and we don't want that. Okay. So in general, what does smicha look like on a korban? Smicha has come up from time to time. What exactly is it? Leaning on a korban. What is this? So how do you do this? Omid b'tzafin ufanav l'mayriv. So you have the animal is in the northern part of the Azar. Now it's facing east-west. V'asomech omed b'mizrach. And you have the person doing smicha is also standing in the east. Although as Rashi says, I was learning with my friend on Shabbos, and so we had a kasha, how could the animal be facing east-west, and then you have the owner kilu to the east, and then he's going to be doing smicha, as we're going to see, by putting his hands on the horns. But Rashi actually does point out, Omed b'mizrach means achor of the mizrach. His back is facing the mizrach. So meaning, he doesn't necessarily have to be in the back of the animal. It can be next to the animal, let's say in the north of it, but his back is going to be facing the east. Ufan of l'mayriv, and his face is facing west. Umaniach shtei yodav ben shtei karnos shel zevach, and he puts his two hands between the two horns of the animal that he's sacrificing. There can't be anything between him and the animal. And he does vidui, he does a confession. If the animal is a korban chatas, so he does a confession for whatever sin that he did. And if it's a guilt offering, so he does a confession for whatever he's guilty for. Skip Meiser Sheni, according to Rashi, Divrei Reb Yossi Aglili. That's the opinion of Reb Yossi Aglili, that for a korban ola, you would do vidur, you would do a confession. For leket, leket of course is that when you are, what's leket? Yeah, leket is that when you're collecting like stalks of wheat from your field, if like, I think two of them fall. I think if it's more than two, then you could take it. But if it's like two stalks fall, or maybe one stalk, gosh, I can't remember now. But if stuff falls when you're collecting your grain, so then you leave it for poor people. Shechicha is if you forget about something, so also you leave that. And peya is that you leave a corner of your field for poor people. So if you neglected to do these things, so you could bring a korban ola for it. And we're going to see machlokas in a second about why. Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva in ola ba el al aseh va lo saisa shnita klaseh. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says no, a korban ola you don't do a vidui, a confession for a korban ola on leket shechicha umfeya. Rather, what you do for a korban ola is a confession for mitzvah saseh that you've missed, or a lav shenita klaseh. So let's say there's, I don't know, classic example of lav anita klaseh, I guess would be like noser, right? It says vanosim lososir b'menu ad boker vanosim b'menu ad boker ba'ish tisrofu. So something that says don't do X, but if you do X, do Y as to fix it. So then I guess if you didn't do that aseh to fix it, then you wouldn't get you wouldn't get malchus because it's not a regular los aseh, but I guess you'd bring a korban ola. And that's how I understand it. Anyways, I remember when I was in yeshiva, 15 years ago plus. So Rabbi J. Marcus, he would say, if you miss, during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, if you miss Kriyas Shema, you'd have to bring a korban. It would cost you 5,000 smackaroos. That was his words. 5,000 smackaroos. And I guess maybe this is the point. Maybe this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Kilu, if you miss a mitzvah saseh, so reading Kriyas Shema is mitzvah saseh. So if you miss Kriyas Shema, so if you're going to have to bring a korban ola for missing a mitzvah saseh, maybe that's what he was referring to. So anyways, so we see a machlokas here between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Aglili regarding what confession do you make on a korban ola if you bring an ola offering. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says you have a confession regarding not doing the laws of leket shechicha and peya. And according to Rabbi Akiva, you would do a confession regarding mitzvah aseis that you missed, or mitzvah or los aseis that are connected to aseis. Right? We've learned about lav shenitak la aseis in the past, right? Lota aseis that then immediately afterwards have a mitzvah asei recorded that you can kind of I think we saw machlokas somewhere, I can't remember where, but about how exactly this construct of a lav anita klase works. But I think that the simple explanation is don't do this thing, but if you do it, here's the remedy. Here's what you can do to fix it. Okay. What is the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Rabbi Yirmiyah says Rabbi Yirmiyah bilav de nevela kamiflige, that they are arguing really regarding nevela, and then we apply it to leket shechicha and peya. Kilu, how does it apply to leket shechicha and peya? And what that means is, when it comes to nevela, it says lo socha ko nevela la gera she b'sharecha titnena v'achala. So it says don't eat nevela. Nevela, of course, is an animal that was not slaughtered properly, or is not, maybe was slaughtered then it would be, I guess, a treifa. Yeah, so it's an animal that wasn't slaughtered properly. So you're not allowed to eat nevela. And then immediately it says, so what do you do? Give it to the ger toshav, to a non-Jewish person who lives with you. So the question is, so it says don't eat nevela, and then this is what you do: you give it away. So the question is that considered a lav anita klase or not? Now, the way that nevela applies to our case is that also when it comes to leket shechicha and pay, it says don't eat it. Rather, you should give it to poor people. So what Rabbi Yirmiyah wants to say is that whatever the machlokas is regarding nevela, whether or not that's a lav anita klase, we're going to apply that to leket shechicha and pay as well. So let's see. Rabbi Akiva savar lav ma'alyu. Rabbi Akiva says, look, the Isra of nevela is mamish a lav. Don't eat nevela. And it's not saying that, and if you do eat nevela, then, I don't know, give away the leftovers, whatever it is, and then you don't need to get malchus. No. What it's saying is, don't eat nevela. What you should do with nevela is give it away, but certainly don't eat it. And if you eat it, you're chayiv malchus. It's a regular lav. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva is going to say that just like by nevela, it's a regular lab. So also by leket shikha and peah, it's just a regular lab. And if you keep it for yourself, you'll be chayav malchus, and therefore there's no korban to bring on it. You chayav malchus. That's the solution. We lash you, but you're not going to bring any korbanos. So then, what's the confession for an ola? Mitzvah saseh and lavanita klaseh. Rabbi Yosef Glili savar lav ma'alyu. Whereas according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, no. Nevela is not a regular lav. Because since immediately after where it says, right, meaning even though Rabbi Yosef Glili agrees that yes, you're not allowed to eat nevela, certainly true, but since right afterwards it says, that comes to serve and to teach that you're not going to be chayiv malchus for nevela, and since you're not going to be chayiv malchus for nevela, so then you would bring a korban ola for it. And the same would apply to leket shikha and peah. That, according to Reb Yosef Glili, no, according to Reb Yirmiyah, that is machlokus between Rabbi Akiva and Reb Yosef Glili, that when it comes to nevela, Rabbi Akiva would say you're chayiv malchus if you eat nevela. Rabbi Yosef Glili would say that you're not, and rather you bring a korban ola, and the same thing would apply to leket shikha and peah. Amar Abaye, says Abaye, D'chulei alma lav de nevela lav ma'alya have. Says Abaye, no. Both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosef Glili would agree regarding nevela that it is certainly a mitzvah lo saise, and it'll be chayiv malchus for it. That's for sure. Besides of kamiflige, here they're specifically arguing with regard to leket shikha and peah when it says ta'azov that you should leave it for the poor people. To Rabbi Akiva savar ta'azov me'ikara mashma. Rabbi Akiva says ta'azov means me'ikara, meaning do not eat and take for yourself leket shikha and peah. Rather, you must leave it for the poor people. And if you take it, you will be chayav malchus. Rabbi Yosef Glili savar hashta mashma. Rabbi Yosef Glili says no, it means not, in advance, but right now. Meaning, if you did take leket shikha and peah for yourself, then you should remedy it by taking it out from yourself and giving it to poor people. But you would not be chayav malchus for it. And if you violated this, then you will, then you bring a korban ola. Okay, so according to Abaye, both Rabbi Yosef Glili and Rabbi Akiva agree that when it comes to nevela, you'll be chayav malchus. But they disagree with regard to leket shikha and peah. Rabbi Akiva says it's a regular lav, and you are going to be chayav malchus, and therefore you don't bring a korban ola for it, you get malchus. Whereas Rabbi Yosef Glili says that you would not be chayav malchus for leket shikha and peah, and therefore you would bring a korban ola for it. All right, very nice machlokas. Tanu Rabbana, the rabbis taught Ketzem Misvada. How does the Kohen Gadol do a confession on his cow on Yom Kippur, his parachatas? Avisi pashati v'chatasi. So the machlokas here between Rabbi, as we're going to see, between Rabbi Meir and the Chacham is going to be with regard to the order of avon, pesha, and chatas. So according to this, we're saying avisi pashati v'chatasi. And similarly, with the goat that he sends out to be thrown off of a cliff, it says, Vizvada olav es kol avonos b'nei Yisrael, and he atones, he does vidur, he confesses on that goat all of the sins of the b'nei Yisrael. V'es kol pish'ei, so the avonos, v'es kol pish'eim, and the peshas, l'chol chatosam, for all of their chatases. V'chein b'Moshe omer, it says also by Moshe, no say avon, v'fesha, v'chata, divrei Reb Meir. That's the opinion of Reb Meir. So first comes avon, then comes pesha, then comes chatas. V'chacham omim, says the chacham, avonos elu azdonos. Okay, so what is avon? Avon is the sins that you do on purpose. B'cheinu omer ikaris tikaris hanefesh ahi avon haba. Okay, a certain fellow maybe chayiv karis because avon haba, because he did a certain avon on purpose. Pshayim elu amuradim. Peshas are things that you do to rebel. Lahachis, specifically that you want to go against the Eibishter. And similarly it says, Melech Moab Pashabi, that the king of Moab rebelled against me. That at that point, the city of Livna rebelled. So we see that Pesha is a rebellious sin. Where am I? Where am I? L'chol chatasam, when it says chatas, elu ashgagis. Chatas is a sin that you do by accident. And similarly it says, nefesh kisechta b'shgaga, a fellow who will do a chet by accident. Okay, so we see that avon is on purpose, pesha is lahachis, to rebel, and chatas is by accident. Now, according to Reb Meir, who says that first comes avon, then comes pesha, then comes chatas, well then, once already he's confessed for the sins that he's done on purpose, and the ones that he's done to rebel, he then gets back to the light stuff. It would make sense to start with the lighter stuff and gradually build up to the more severe. So Ella, so therefore the Chacham say, no, the Vider of the Kohen Gadol was the following. That I did chatas, avons, and peshas going in order of severity, from the least severe to the most severe. Lifanecha, before you, ani uvesi v'chuli, me and my family. David Omer, similarly it says by David, chatanu im avosenu ha'evinu hirshanu. V'chein b'shlomo hu Omer chatanu v'ha'evinu roshanu. V'chein b'Danielu Omer chatanu v'avinu v'irshanu maradnu. So we see that they're all going in this order, starting with chatas and ending up with pesha, which is rebelling. But then 1 second, according to the Chacham, what about Moshe, who says avon v'fesha v'chata, that he starts with avon and ends with chatas? What Moshe was saying before God was, Ribbonu Shalom, Master of the world, when the Yidden sin before you, vos and shuve, and they repent, God, when the Yidden sin and then they do tshuva, please make it as though the sins that they did intentionally, make it as though they did them by accident. Amar Rabba Bar Shmuel, Amar Rav, halacha kedivri chachamim, says Rabba Bar Shmuel, in the name of Rabba, the halacha is like the chachamim. Pshita, frak the Gemara. Obviously the halacha is like the chachamim. Yachid v'Rabba malacha k'Rabba. When you have a single opinion against a majority opinion, obviously we always go like the majority opinion. We all know that. Ma'udetema, says the Gemara, yeah, but I would have thought mistaber time into Reb Meir, that in this case, I understand Reb Meir's opinion because to come Messiah lekra the Moshe, because we have the pasuk by Moshe. No say av mafesha v'chata. Kamash malon. Therefore, it's teaching us that. Therefore, Rav Bar Shmuel needs to teach us in the name of Rav that Allah is like the Chacham, that rather it goes chatas, then avon, then pesha. Hahu denachis kamei de Rabba. There was a certain fellow who was the shliach tzibur in front of Rabba. We saw another fellow who was shliach tzibur in front of Rabba, I think in Masechta Brachos, where he said, Hakel hagadol hagibor, ve'anora, ve'izuz, ve'tomim, and all sorts of things. And Rabba said, no, have you had enough? Hakoponim. So a certain fellow was a shliach tzibur in front of Rabba, v'avid Reb Meir. And he talked like Reb Meir. He said, chatas, avon, pesha. No, the opposite. Avon, pesha, chatas. And he says, so Rabbi said to this fellow, he said, why are you doing like Reb Meir and not like the rabbis, which is the majority opinion? He says, look, I hold like Reb Meir because Reb Meir is in line with the psukim that Moshe Rabbeinu said. So that is why I did it that way. We'll hold it here for Daf Lamed Vav, but there was a lot on that page, right? I feel like recently we haven't had such, sugyas with opinions. Here already there's a lot there. And so we began the daf with a discussion of what exactly is considered the north of the Azara. We saw 3 opinions there. There's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, which is the area mamish opposite the Mizbeach, is what's called the northern part of the Azara that you could slaughter kachim. According to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, add to that the northern part of Bein Ulam V'la Mizbeach, the part of the Azara between the Ulam the entranceway to the Eichel and the Azara. And then you have the opinion of Rebbe, which adds to that also the northern part of the Ezras Kohanim and the Ezras Yisrael, which is the area that you enter into immediately upon entering into through the Shar Nikanor. We then discussed vidui. How do you confess on a sacrifice? So you basically lean on it, and for a chatas, you would say what the sin that you bring a sin offering for. For a guilt offering, you would explain what the reason for your guilt offering is. And for an ola, we had a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that you confess for the sin of leket, shichacha, and peah, or not setting them aside for poor people. According to Rabbi Akiva, you would confess for mitzvah aseis and lav shenitak la aseis. We had two opinions regarding what the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Haglili is. According to Rabbi Yirmiyah, they're arguing about nevela. That by nevela it says lo sochal kol nevela lagesher b'sharecha tenenu v'achala. So just like over there, so Rabbi Yossi Haglili would say that lav by nevela you would not get malchus for, and therefore you'd bring a korban ola for it. And the same would apply to leket, shichach, and peah that says don't eat it, rather give it to the poor people. So therefore he would say you don't get malchus for leket, shichach, and peah, and you would do a confession on your korban ola for it. Rabbi Akiva says that nevela is mamish alav, and you would get malchus for it, and therefore you don't bring a korban ola for it, you get malchus. And instead, the confession of a korban ola is for asay and lav shenitak asay. Says Rabbi Abaye, no, everyone agrees that when it comes to nevela, you would get malchus for that. The machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Haglili is specifically by leket, shichach, and peah. Rabbi Akiva says leket, shichach, and peah is mamash alav, and you be chayav malchus for it. According to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, because there's the positive commandment of give it to the poor people, therefore you would not be chayav malchus for leket, shichach, and peah, and you would do confession on your korban ola for it. And then we got to the vidui of the Kohen Gadol on his cow on Yom Kippur. We have machlokas between Reb Meir and the Chachamim. According to Reb Meir, you start with avon and then pesha and then chatas. And according to the rabbis, they say that wouldn't make sense because chatas is the least severe. Rather, you would start with chatas and work your way up, and it would be chatas, avon, and then pesha. That was Daf Lamed Vav. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Cheers.